And so, for the last of my Parisian pilgrimages, the last of these meditations, I am now sitting in a corner at the Café de Magot, which was famous, effectively, for being the place where Simone de Beauvoir and Jean-Paul Sartre had many meetings and discussions in the beginnings of the development of the philosophy we now know as existentialism. So we've been at the Bastille, the beating heart of the French Republic, of liberty, fraternity, equality, and now at the De Magot and the Café de Flore next door. We're at the heart, the origins of existentialism, the belief, the revolution in moral philosophy, and to some extent also political philosophy, that put choices at the absolute centre of our beliefs about the world, how we become who we are, what we're responsible for. And I've come here partly because it's a good place to come, a mythic, iconic place, but also partly because the issue of choice is quite pivotal for a lot of questions around homelessness. Have people chosen to be homeless? Have people chosen to drink and to take drugs? If people say, well, he made the choice to live on the streets, he made the choice to live as people choose to live as they do. They want to, they go back to it, they return. A battered wife returns to the abusing husband. Are they morally responsible for their choices? Do we have any responsibility at all to provide a way out of the corner they've walked themselves, boxed them into? And what I want to do is to look again at the economic development philosophy of Amartya Sen, who also looked at similar issues in terms of why people choose to remain in their economically deprived situation. He suggested that one of the crucial elements of human psychology that then becomes an aspect of human society and economics and politics is what he called adaptive preferences. People's preferences, the things that they would choose to do, they adapt. They adapt to be realistic about their circumstances. If it's realistically hugely impossible for you to better your circumstances, what you choose to do, the way you choose to live your life, is to make the best of what you have, to espouse it, to enjoy it, to find in it what strength and what satisfaction you can. If you live in a really strictly hierarchical divided caste system, for example, it may be that there's almost nothing you can do to improve your own or your children, your family's life circumstance, other than to adapt to it with as much spiritual depth as you can find. And there are many societies equally divided where people find their possibilities for improving their lot more in acceptance and developing a kind of spiritual side rather than in striving to achieve. One of the things that the epidemiologist Richard Wilkinson looked at in some depth was the extent to which in an increasingly hierarchical world people make decisions that we might disapprove of. They might take particularly risky decisions or shortcuts such as crime as a way to improve their circumstances, socially disapproved of ways. A young woman gets pregnant by the local drug dealer. A young man is caught in a robbery. having tried to improve his circumstances through crime. The more unequal the society, the further apart the rungs of the ladder, and of course as well in a modern society, the more dangled in front of you are the fruits of entitlement, the more inclined people will be to find some short circuit, some shortcut, where those fruits are not dangled so seductively in front of us. Perhaps the more spiritual route to feeling good about yourself, to think that there's something you can do to improve your lot. Maybe these are other options. So when somebody is completely down and out, and they're not sure where their next meal or their next fix is going to come from, how realistic is it that we demand of them the kind of ambitious goal setting, the kind of career path that we might expect from somebody who is just finishing a university degree or collecting their inheritance? The fact that people have chosen their life is a fact in psychology. That people adapt their preferences to what's within range, what's achievable. The choices we make only to some extent make us what we are. It's the circumstances in which we find ourselves that can sometimes massively limit the choices and the moral responsibility we have, and therefore the responsibility that the rest of society has towards people making those choices. If we've left people in a situation where those are the kind of choices you have, and we've left them in that situation, there is a shared culpability which is pretty much inescapable. And that's the basis of empathy, that's the basis of all those religious philosophies that say we have to go out towards, we have to engage. It's up to us to engage people who are marginalised, destitute, despairing, and sometimes maladaptive preferences, we might say. So that's not a bad place to pause.